Welcome to the Invincible Innovation Show, the podcast for changemakers. Each week, I talk to the most fascinating entrepreneurs and innovation leaders about innovation, strategy, and design. Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about the depth of social media and why it's time to transform social from an exploitive entertainment toy into a tool for global cooperation. Thanks, Peter. Welcome to Invincible Innovation Lab. So I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Mazor, Kario, product innovation and value creation expert, and I'll be your host. And today we have a very important guest, Peter, that helped me at the beginning, so it's a good start. Thanks, Peter, for being here.
Thank you. I'm
Peter
thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're here. Peter Montoya is the CEO of Urth with the U. So we're so happy to have you. We're live on LinkedIn and YouTube and Facebook, and you're so invited to join the discussion. And now we can start. I could tell you that before I thought about this discussion, I said I have so much to say about social media that I hope that we'll have the time in these 40 minutes just to capture the essence of what are the emotions that brings to me and to other, I guess, people who view us and listen to us. So let's start with what's wrong with social media, as you see.
Oh, I'm so incredibly curious about the emotions that social media gives you. So when you hear social media, what emotions come up for you?
Especially anger. I feel like I'm so angry that we all got to the point, I'm included, to a point that you can't do with it and you can't do without it. And you need it for certain places in your life. Like I use LinkedIn so much. On the other side, it seems like it's navigating the way you think, it's navigating the way that we behave, it's navigating, and it's like these blinders that you have for horses. So it makes your view of the world so narrow, and it makes me angry to think about what we're doing, especially what our kids are doing. I have 4 kids, and for me, it's like I'm trying to figure out what does that mean for their future. So that's what comes up to my mind.
That is a perfect starting point, and I am right with you. I'm a combination of just angry and incredibly disappointed because social media could be so much more. The promise of what it could be is so great, and what it currently is so rotten. And so it's so disruptive to human beings that it's so disappointing. Social media, and I'm going to paint a broad brush across all social media platforms, and not all of them are as bad as what I'm going to describe. LinkedIn is, fairly benign. It's a really good reputational connecting point for professionals. I happen to like TikTok a lot, just for what it is. It's just pure entertainment. However, it's really addictive entertainment. And so, people are there for 6 hours a day, and it's kind of a waste of time. But it isn't nearly as corrupt as some of the other social media platforms. So social media, what it currently is an exploitive entertainment toy that robs us of our happiness and our dignity, and actually is changing our brains. It's changing us from having longer, more empathetic focus and concentration to being short, having short attention spans, which are very, very judgmental. And also we're becoming more lonely, anxious, and isolated. So I think that's my starting point with my disappointment with social media.
Yeah. So how would you answer someone who would say, how can you blame everything for that's loneliness is something so vivid and everybody feels that, but it's like the fact that we're living in cities and we don't live in small groups and we're so far apart and we work so hard. So how can you focus that social media is part of the problem? Or maybe the main problem as you see it?
It certainly is part of the problem. So human beings were designed to live in small tribes of 100 to 200 people. And these containers that you and I live in, called houses and apartments, with all of our privacy, where we are in a dyadic container with one other primary partner and maybe a couple of kids is not how we were designed. We were designed to raised and live in a tribe. Human beings are herd animals. So if ever you've seen a herd of zebras or a herd of elephants, that's how we were meant to be raised. But because of the way our society has evolved over the last couple hundred years, with cars creating suburbs and our own little houses, that's a large part of the reason of why we are alone the way we're alone. And then social media, kind of on top of that, only exacerbated that condition that already existed.
Yeah.
So social media is at its absolute worst. And I don't know if you're guilty of this. I certainly am, of laying in bed with my back to my partner's back on my phone on social media. That's when social media is at its worst, when it's keeping you apart from the person you're right next to. And social media is at its very best when it facilitates real world interactions. So we are an incredibly social animal, and we need not only this proximity of having a Zoom call, a stream chat is good, but it's not nearly as good as you and I being face to face.
I
Actually,
totally agree with that. So next time you're in Israel, we're going to do the real thing, and we're going to have a chat.
I'd love that. I have not been to Israel yet, but my mother-in-law loves Israel, and she wants me to go so badly. So it's high on my list of places to go.
You should. So at least you have a first conversation for sure there. So you should come. But I will tell you what I think. Like first, you asked me about am I part of it. So yeah, I'm addicted to the social media, but we have a law in our house that we cannot take all devices to our bed store. Like nobody can take anything up. So it's always like down. It doesn't mean that my kids are not attached to their devices. It means that I care about them sleeping. That's it. So that's and me included. So me and my husband, we don't take it. But first, it's hard because it's not common. And second, I totally understand that you're so eager to stay attached to your friends, to what's going on. It's part of your entertainment. You go to sleep with it. Some people read in their devices. So I totally understand where it comes from. For me, what is starting with what you said, when we really want to communicate, we need to be in the same location to look in the eye and to understand people. And there is so much information you cannot get from me from here up. Maybe my leg is shaking. Maybe I'm doing like things that you cannot really see because the transfer of information is not that good. Maybe something in my context is something that you don't see. Maybe I have someone next to me doing something. You don't really know that. So it seems that we're getting such partial information. And it's worse when you're using, let's say, WhatsApp because it's only text. And it's much worse when you're using, let's say, Twitter or Facebook because it's colored with so much not personal stuff, but the things the facade that I want you to think about me, right? Which makes me more aware of what I should be or how should I be seen by you, right?
Correct. Yeah. So, for most of social media, we are creating a brand or an image for ourselves versus being our authentic selves. And social media rewards us for only showing the angles of our best life versus our authentic lives. And so when we are actually face to face having coffee, you're more likely to get an authentic experience out of me and hear what is really going on versus when you see social media, which is only a small sliver, which is the version of my best life.
Yeah, I heard a really interesting research of people know that when they present themselves in social media, it's not the real thing. They're just, have happy family pictures and they're not showing the time that they shouted on their kids, you need to clean your room or something, right? It's not something you go to social media with usually. But on the other hand, when they see people on social media, they really believe that their life is perfect. And it's like, it doesn't make sense, but this is how people see that. Like, this person is really happy. He's not a facade of being happy. This person that I went to school with, or he is really happy. But my life is mediocre or less.
Yes. So there's
How do you
tons
explain
and
that?
tons of comparison going on. And that comparison causes us lots of self-judgment, shame, anxiety. Yeah. So on an individual level, social media by and large is a negative. And most people, when they are asked how they feel before, during, and after social media, they usually feel best before they get on it. They usually feel bad when they're on it, and they usually feel terrible when they're getting off of it. And so the highest feelings are usually prior to getting on it. So it's not really doing a good enough job of transferring our authentic lives.
So we were talking about the psychological impact of like feeling shame, feeling bad about where you are, maybe the fact that somebody else is doing something that I want to do, so I'm maybe envious. So all these like bad feelings, but it's still addictive. So most people are not addicted to bad feelings. So how do you explain that? That we're addicted to
Oh,
something that makes us feel bad?
yeah, it's so strange that we love to hate it. That we're
Yeah.
on the average. So, first of all, there are 7.8 billion people on the planet. There are 4.8 billion people on social media, on all the social media
Wow.
platforms. They are spending an average of 2 hours and 25 minutes a day on social media. So social media is here and it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And by and large, people are on it and they kind of wish they weren't. They wish they were out in nature or seeing friends or doing other things. But social media is so easy. The technology companies have made it so easy for us to get alerts and get reminders. They have used all of the latest behavioral sciences to get us addicted and back into that phone that's always with us, with haptic buzzes that happen in our pockets or little dings that show up, and we get this little dopamine result going, well, gosh, maybe somebody said something interesting that I want to respond back to, and we're right back into it. Or even at its worst, social media was rigged for outrage for the longest time, which means they purposely and intentionally put people together who are at odds with one another, saying the most outrageous things, getting themselves angry. So you would spend 2 or 3 days, an hour a day, 2 or 3 hours a day, fighting with somebody on social media, just so
Yeah.
you want it. So for most social media, their key performance metrics, the number one performance metric is time on screen. They want to keep you on that screen so they can sell you more advertising, so they can generate more revenue, so they can increase their stock price. And that is
Yeah.
why I think that most social media companies are so incredibly evil.
Yeah. You know, when you said about like when you're fighting with someone, that makes sense to me because sometimes you're just venting, right? You just want to put anger out and it makes you feel righteous and you're better. So
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why people do that. I don't understand why people want to feel shame about their body, about their life, about what they're doing, or feeling bad about their accomplishments, which is hard. But I have two things that comes to my mind. First, you know, is the movie Social Media. I guess that it's part of what we're talking about Facebook and other social media. So it's talking explicitly. You know the movie, right?
Yes, I do.
So I think it's connected to that, and part of what the main people who talk there are designers, and I come from design, and I totally understand how designers do these tricks in order to make you do something because they are so they understand the audience, understand the users, so they could just do exactly what makes them tick. So first, I'm taking responsibility as a designer to what we design and put out in the world. And the second thing that comes to my mind, I think before the pandemic, like 2 years ago, the last time I've been to San Francisco, they had this show in the main street of San Francisco, and it was talking about social media and tech and how it's influencing our lives. And they gave this small booklet. It's about detoxing from social media and from tech. And it was so strange to go to San Francisco when most of things there are born there, and to get this kit. It's called a detox kit or something to
Clever.
make people more aware of what they're doing. Did you see this?
No, I
It
haven't
was
seen
an
that, but it's very clever.
It's an exhibition, very interesting one. So, do you think that people will need to go to detox from social media and tech?
Unfortunately, I don't think that as much. So I've written a book called the Second Civil War: A Citizen's Guide to Healing Our Fractured Nation, and I wrote that book, and the book is really good. So everyone who reads that book goes, "Oh my God, I totally get it. I see now how the media and social media has been playing me for a pawn and playing me for a fool and making me hate my neighbor. I understand it, but it's only changing one mind at a time." And I really, after writing that book, came to the realization that changing one mind at a time just does not change the world. The best way to change the world is to change systems. So if we really want to change the world, we have to invent a new system for how we connect online. And that's why I've launched, or I'm launching, a new civil media platform. So as much as I applaud their efforts for me writing a book, and I applaud you for going on podcasts and saying that social media is not healthy for us, and I applaud that group for putting out that box to help detox, systems is what changes the world.
Yeah. So I have two questions first about the book, the Second Civil War. So what are the two parties and like two enemies in the war?
That's a really good
Explain
question.
that first.
Yeah, because the United States of America fought a civil war 140 years ago, and the dividing lines were incredibly clear. It was over slavery and state versus federal rights. It was a very, very clear dividing lines. Here in the United States, there is another civil war going on right now. And when you ask, what is the war over? And there is no clear dividing line. The major dividing line is, well, I think your side is crazy, and I think that your side is trying to destroy the country, which is kind of obtuse. It's not very clear.
You see that in the US, in all over the world. I think it's not only in the US.
Yes, it's happening all over the world because our media system, our sensationalized media system, is like spreading like a cancer, not only through social media, but through cable news all around the world. So we are hardwired to want to consume more news because we think when we consume more news, we'll be better informed. And as we're better informed, we increase our chances of survival.
Yeah, and we want control. We feel that we're in control when we know the situation. We know what's going on, so we'll be prepared.
Exactly. Now, but here's the truth is, when you watch the news, what percentage of the news actually provides you information that you can use to make actionable decisions about your life?
I don't
and the
watch
answer is
anymore.
1%, 2%, 3%.
Maybe.
The vast majority are about problems that are happening halfway around the world that you can do absolutely nothing about. Nothing about. All those media, when I say media, I'm talking about cable news, social media, podcasts, radio. For the most part, all they're doing is pumping you full of fear and anxiety and hatred for another group of people. All they're doing is saying, how do you make good people do bad things? Is you convince them that somebody else is trying to take something away from them. That's how you do it. You convince them that somebody else is an outsider trying to take something away. And when you watch the news through that lens and see how often it's painting a good and a bad guy all the time, you'll realize that the news really has very little value for you. I mean, the actionable information that appears on the news is like traffic and weather. And, there were some moments during the pandemic, and we're having a drought here in California, that news is information I can do something with, but that's a small percentages of what's actually on the news. I don't consume any news. And when I say zero, I mean zero news.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that this pandemic made it even worse because we understood, especially I understood, I think most people understood that when you're watching these like things that makes you so anxious, you're feeling helpless. You don't feel any control over your life. And when you're feeling helpless, you cannot really do anything. It's not connected to the pandemic and it's not connected to your personal life. You just feel you cannot do anything. And then it makes you more helpless and more anxious about your life, right? So for me, and Israel have lots of news. We have lots of news, right? Everything is changing all the time. you could tell lots of stories in Israel because everything is very fast here. So instead of someone trying to clear the view and say like, yeah, this is the situation, but this and that, like something that makes you feel a bit that you understand what's going on. Even it's not even like being in control, just to understand what's going on. And you have so many factors and so much hatred in Israel. Everybody's against everyone, more or less. You could say that, and you saw it so clearly in the pandemic that people, I think, really, I don't know, for me, I think I don't really trust what they're saying because who is against who? Just clear the picture. Like everybody's against everyone, and you're saying to yourself, like, if everyone is against everyone, what is it like? What does it mean? Like, how can I really understand that? How can I do something in my life as a person, as a civilian, as like you're so confused all the time. So for me, I'm not watching the news for years, but for sure not right now.
Good for
I'm
you.
not watching the news because it's like taking poison into your head
Yes.
and your heart.
Yes.
So I'm not doing that, and I don't feel that I don't know. I know exactly what's going on. Something is very important. Somebody would tell me. So that's it.
Exactly. That's what I found out too. Is if it's something really important, someone brings it up in conversation. It's
Yeah.
exactly it.
So people talk to me, and I listen. And if it's very important, I know, I would take it into my considerations, and that's it. So it seems that because like media, after all, they're a for-profit organization, right? So they want you to watch the media, and if they'll tell you something which is good, it will not be so exciting for you because
Mhm.
we're built to really be attached and focus on something that might hurt us, which are bad stimulus, right? So they're giving us what we're maybe even wired to see. And we are wired to really catch something. Maybe somebody is in the woods and there is, I don't know, a coyote there. I need to be aware of it.
Correct.
And the leaves that are around me, that's nice, but I don't have to focus on them. They're good, right? So it's good. So they're like using really hijacking the way that we think in order to make us consume more,
Correct.
right?
Absolutely. This is exactly what they're doing. They are hijacking our Stone Age brain to make us think things are important when they're really not. The best news out there is boring news. So there
Yeah.
are more boring news channels. The BBC to me is really, really boring. And there are here in the United States, there's PBS and NPR, and they're boring. They don't make me all angry and all upset. And the best, if you're going to consume news, you want to find the most boring one possible because it means it is not trying to hijack your emotions. It means it's just trying to inform you. And that is the only news worth watching. It is ones that are boring. So I prefer myself to watch long form journalism, which means either books or documentaries. So I will wait. People easily watch 2 hours of news a day, easily,
Yeah.
and
And in Israel, even more. We
even
have
more.
each half an hour, we have news.
So in 10 hours, you can read a book. In 10 hours,
Yeah.
you can read a book. So 2 hours a day, 5 days, that's a book. So
Yeah.
rather than me watching the horrible, terrible exit the United States had out of Afghanistan, and I caught little clips of video on that, and
Yeah.
I saw a couple talking heads talking about who was right and who was wrong and how we screwed it up. I'll wait a year, and then I will actually read a book that actually interviews all the prime ministers, the generals, the defense secretaries, and they'll get to be the real story.
Yeah.
And then I will read a long 500-page book in about 10 hours that will tell me empathetically with real information in the way that I understand what really happened, rather than watching this sensationalized outrage machine every single day for 2 hours.
So we have a
Books
very
are so much better.
Yeah, I totally agree. So Erez Dershkovich is saying that if everyone follows my idea, there will be no one to update me on the news. So Erez is totally right, but I'm not sure that every news is so important. So maybe I need to not know about some of them. But I totally agree. I don't think that nobody needs to know what's going on in the world. I'm just saying that the way that we're consuming the news and what's going on is it makes us feel bad, and it makes us feel anxious and lonely and helpless. And sometimes when you're doing something, you would need to be aware that there is something that you could do or not, but always feeling that nothing is, there is no hope. It feels it yeah. He says that I need to think positive. Aries says we need to think positive. Yeah, but how can you feel think positive, Aries? Because everybody's saying that everything is like around you, you cannot control. Everything is bad. Everything is sensation. Everything is really like they're overreacting, and you see it in Israel all the time. Like we had like half a year ago in Israel, we had very bad weather, really bad weather, but we don't have like hurricane in Israel, never ever. Okay, and we had like it was a bit windy, and we had some places we had snow, but not more than that. And they gave it a name, like Katrina, and there is a storm, and like no, it's not. It's just windy weather. That's it. The fact that you call it, it's not Katrina. It's not like it was so. They're just trying to catch your attention, and they're succeeding. So it's I totally understand why they're doing that. But I want to take this further and to talk about the metaverse, right? So it's like the next stage of everyone not going outside, staying in front of a screen, and then being detached from your real life in this like AR thing, and going into a world which is not the real world. So what do you think about that?
So first of all, you have to define the metaverse, and it's really hard to define. Is something like Roblox the metaverse? Yeah, probably. Are some of these open world games like Second Life, are those a metaverse? Yeah, probably. So, and then of course we saw the debut of what Facebook considered to be the metaverse, where you're actually living there and working there. Is it the metaverse? And sure, maybe that's the metaverse. So first thing you've got to understand is that between 30 and 40% of all people get motion sick when wearing VR goggles. So
I'm
if
one
you're
of
wearing
them for
VR
sure.
goggles all day long, between 30 and 40% of people will get actually motion sick. Will
Yeah.
I use eventually VR goggles to do a meeting like this? So rather than having a two-dimensional interaction with
Yeah.
you, will it feel more three-dimensional? Sure, absolutely. Will I do that for a half an hour or an hour? Absolutely. Am I going to spend 8 or 12 hours a day with those stupid goggles on my face? And the answer is absolutely not. So it is going to be a niche product that you use sometimes, especially for us adults. There are people and there are movies, documentary films for people who actually have gotten sucked into games like Second Life, where they actually built relationships and then tried to have real world relationships. And almost always, the people who were spending 6 and 8 hours a day were addicted, and they were incredibly unhealthy. They had unhealthy lives. So if we are at our healthiest when we are actually spending real time, real world, face to face, that's where our healthiest. The metaverse is 180 degrees in the wrong direction. So for us, which is an upstart civil media company who is trying to get a toehold in a very, very crowded universe, I couldn't be happier that Facebook is going to spend $10 billion and all of their energy on something as stupid as the metaverse. Couldn't be happier that they're going to do that. They think that corporations are going to trust them, which means that you're going to put these VR goggles on, or AR or VR goggles on, and you're going to be doing your whole work life. Instead of looking at a computer screen, you'll see a screen on your VR goggles, and you're going to be showing your most sensitive work documents, and you're going to share that with Facebook. I don't know any business in America that trusts Facebook with their data. Facebook is one of the most exploitive and evil companies on the planet. They will take, if they see your work documents, they will be reading it, they'll be scanning it, they'll be using it for their own means. They are so incredibly untrustable, and businesses know that. So the whole idea that we're going to be doing our work inside of Facebook, who has exploited our data, is a fantasy. It's an absolute illusion. Now, we do trust Google and we do trust Microsoft with all of our work data. We already have our Microsoft Words and Sheets there. So we might do that. We might go into a meeting there and share our data. But with Facebook, it is absolutely not going to happen. So I couldn't be happier that they're trying to just foray into the metaverse.
Yeah, but I'd be happy to hear. Yesterday, I got a link for someone that Accenture is taking the first day of their new employees in the metaverse, and
Wow.
and for me, it's like doing the wrong thing, because right now companies are finding so hard to do the onboarding for new employees for everything online and remotely, and they're not connected to the company, they're not connected to their teams, they don't feel obligated to the companies afterwards, so they have huge problems with new employees that are working only remotely. And instead of trying to fix it with a human connection, that they have someone mentoring them, somebody really making them like up to speed, understanding what's going on, and being human as I see it, they're going to the other direction, make it less human.
Hmm.
What would I do in my new in my workplace? I don't know anyone. I don't know anything about my position. I don't know who's against who, what are like the dynamics. I don't know anything. And I would put these like stupid things on. What, how would it help me? Why would I meet a half person? They don't have legs. And why would I need them there?
Right.
Like, maybe I'm too old. When I think about it, I'm saying, like, maybe I don't understand the young generation, but why would they do it?
No. So I even think the younger generation who does put a VR on, like my son will wear his VR goggles. He wears them for an hour or two. He's not wearing them for 8 or 12 hours a day. And I've tried him in the games. They're wonderfully immersive. They are so much fun. They're a great form of gaming and entertainment. And like I said, a Zoom call would be wonderful to do that way. And so I'm all for these very, very limited ways. But we, again, I go back to what I first said. We are a herd animal and we need face-to-face contact. And we have friends, both Addie, you have friends, and I have friends, and they have said to us the following: I love you and I'm there for you. And we hear that phrase, I am there for you. And that phrase only has so much real meaning to us. We appreciate the sentiment of it, that they are there for us, but are they really physically there? And there's somewhere inside of our deep midbrain that realizes, no, they are not actually there in our house. So when our car doesn't start the next morning, they are not there. When we are sick in the middle of the night and we need someone to care for us, they are not physically there. We need to have people physically in our presence in order to feel physically safe and psychologically safe. And the workplace is one of the last places that we actually have where we can actually join in community. We have the workplace, we may have a church or synagogue, we may have sports teams, but we have very few places now where we congregate in person. We absolutely need that. So you're right. If the technology giants had their way, Facebook would be online on our goggles. Amazon would have us delivering things to our doorstep. Uber would continue having us driving around in these little containers with one person that we don't really know being shuttled from place to place. We're constantly being put in these little teeny isolated cubes farther and farther away from other people. We are a herd animal. We need the interconnected relationships of multiple people where I know you and you know my friend John and John knows me. And when I'm not around, you and John talk about me, and not in a gossipy way, but in a caring and loving way. That is what we need to feel both physically safe and psychologically safe. And all of the research says if you want to live longer, happier, healthier, with better brain function, you need more physical, real world relationships.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I always think about, there is this like ranking of happy nations, like each time they're doing these surveys and finding, and I'm always surprised to see that Israel is about the 10th in the number. And we have hard lives. It's really expensive to live in Israel. We have lots of problems, as you might know. But for me, when I'm trying to really understand why, I think it's because we have these like families, very close relationship. We're such a small country. We know each other.
Yes.
It's so common in Israel just to talk to someone, and then he knows someone that I know, and it's a daily thing. We know each other, and it happens all of the time. And the fact that you have this community, you have this feeling, it's not like that we're not living in houses, and it's not like we're fire chatting all the time. No, it's not fireside chat 24/7. No. But see, we know that we have someone half an hour from us, and that's it. My family is half an hour, all of my family, half an hour away from me. That's it. Because the country is so small, we're talking about physical connection, right? It's near. So you feel that you're physically and mentally you have secure situation. Although we're not secure at all in Israel, like it's not really happening. But the feeling is that you have someone like next to you,
Right.
and it's so important. It's really
It's so important. Yeah, it's so incredibly important. So yeah, cars are one of the worst. Well, they're one of the best and worst things that's ever happened to humanity. They have expanded our capitalism, and capitalism has a lot of faults, but also capitalism has been one of the greatest wealth creators and also one of the most greatest elevators of people out of poverty. It's been wonderful things. It's been horrible for the environment, horrible for workers' rights, and it's been horrible for us psychologically because it's allowed us to separate from our family. When we choose where we live, we kind of choose the location first. Like, where do I want to live? What part of, by the bay, by the beach, in the mountains? We choose where we want to live. We choose that in consideration where we want to work. And then third, we think about community. And that is completely and totally backwards. The first thing we should be picking is community. That should be the first decision point. Who are the people that I'm going to be in community with, in relationship with, where I live? That should be the first choice, and then the economics, and then maybe the lifestyle that's around you. But the people should be the first decision criteria we're using when picking where we live.
Yeah, I totally agree. Although I know it's uncommon. So Israel is very uncommon in that stage because like the way that we see things is very different, and our experience in life is very different, and the way that we are as a nation is very different. So I cannot really compare. I feel like in many other places, people are really lonely. So I have a cousin who lives in London, for example, and she left London to live in the suburbs. And she told me that when you live in London, I never lived there, I just visited, that you feel so alone, you're so isolated. And socially, you feel like, yeah, I know people, but you need to set a time, like a few months from now, we'll have time to just catch up. And it doesn't make sense to me what everybody's doing. Like they're working and not watching Netflix. They don't have time for each other.
Right.
Like it doesn't make sense. Instead of like consuming another series, binging something on Netflix, wouldn't it make sense just to go out for a coffee if you're both in London? It will take an hour in the tube. That's it, right? And people are like it feels that they are so used to being in their own world, in their maybe in their hobbies. I'm just trying to imagine their daily lives, and I don't understand why people decide that. I understand that it's easy just to go back from work and just open Netflix.
The reason is work is scheduling meetings is work. And so in a city like New York, it's too dense. So because it is so dense and because there's so many people, even living in a city block, there might be 10,000 people. You go, well, I can't know all these 10,000 people, even in a city block. So you just don't. So we need a much more moderate density. A city like Venice is probably a really good example about how dense it should be for us, so we can actually get our mind around knowing people. I met a tour guide in Venice, and I asked her how long it took for her to get from her apartment to the dock where she picked us up. And she said between 15 minutes and an hour and a half. And I go, Venice isn't that big. I've walked the whole island. How could it be either 15 minutes or an hour and a half? And she says, well, it depends on the time of day and whether my friends are out. So if her friends are out, she has to stop and have all these conversations along the way before she gets to the dock. And that's the way it should be, where it's this serendipitous conversations and engagement. We should be able to walk out of our door and see a community of people who was already there. That way we don't have to plan it in advance. It just naturally is always there happening. So that's the big challenge for us. in meeting with people is we have to schedule it and coordinate their time frame and our frames and emails and the rest of it versus just walking outside of our door and there always being another group of people who we can be in community with.
Yeah, it reminds me of when people starting to go back from remote work to their offices, what they're really talking about is these like serendipitous walk when you're walking to the coffee and somebody else is working from like in front of you and you're just chatting on the way, or when you sit in the coffee and you're just doing that and you cannot really usually don't do it when it's on Zoom calls. You just say, how are you? And then you start talking about work, right? And they really miss that. So before we're done, I have to hear more about Urth. So how do you think we're going to fix this way of like, we're so focused on hearing and focusing on bad things and consuming them, and everything which is too good is boring. So how would we change that?
So Urth is a mission disguised as a social media network. We are developing a completely new category of social media called civil media. And civil media means two things. It means, number one, kind and respectful discourse. We have both the policy and the technology, which will engineer people being much more civil. The number one complaint that we hear from people is, I'm afraid of posting because I just want to be myself without the fear of being pounced upon. You will once again be able to be your authentic self on social media to share your strong opinions, your sadnesses, your grievances, your excitement, and share your real self without fear of being pounced upon. So that's the first thing we'll solve with civil media. We will eliminate bots, trolls, and most misinformation. So that's the first part of civility. The second part of civility comes from the Latin root, which is for the benefit of the Commonwealth. So civil media is actually about collective action. We are not building really a technology platform. Yes, it is a technology platform, but what it really is a brand new cooperative construct. It is a new way for people to cooperate at scale, which means 10,000, 100,000, a million, or a billion. It will allow for strangers to cooperate at large scale to solve either local, national, or global problems. I don't know what issue you care about most, what national or global issue hits your heart most. It could be wealth inequality. It could be deforestation. It could be ocean pollution. It could be sexism. It could be violence. For me, it happens to be climate change. But no matter what problem you want or worried about, there right now are no good solutions. The governments are not moving fast enough. Corporations don't have the economic interest in solving problems, and international organizations like UN and NATO don't have the teeth to compel cooperation. However, I know that at least 51% of all of humanity cares about climate change and wants to do something. Urth is not just a social media platform. Yes, you can post about your day and you can share videos about your cats and you can watch entertainment videos. But more importantly, you can share about problems. We can coalesce around what those problems are. And then we can work together to solve really big problems. So it's not only like conversation. So social media is a conversation. It is conversation with civility and, more importantly, collective action. Urth will become the largest civil media network on the planet. We will have billions of users around the world, all collectively working together to solve our species' biggest problems.
Thank you. It sounds really, really interesting. So I would love to hear more, and that's a good time to ask you, where could people hear more about what you're doing and to go and visit Urth with the U?
The U, right? It's Urth, URTH.cc. And CC stands for conscious creator. We don't call anybody on our platform a user. The only two industries that use the term users are software companies and drug dealers, which means they objectify people. We do not. We believe that every single human being on our platform is a conscious creator. So that's Urth.cc. And we call you Earthlings, not users. And every Earthling has something to contribute to our platform. We are currently building a pre-beta community, and it's a forum where I get on there, our director of engineering, chief product officer get on there and share on a regular basis. Here's what we're thinking about doing. Give us some feedback. So our pre-beta community is incredibly important to us to give us feedback, to co-create with us this platform. We really believe that people own what they create. So we believe we need people's input and people's buy-in to our community to help us create a platform that people will use and will finally dethrone Facebook, Instagram's dominance in the world as the number one social media platform. We have three very, very, very simple goals. Number one, take down Facebook. Number two, restore democracy. And number three, save our species. That's all we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's all. Small things.
That's it.
So first, I'm going to tell you good luck with these like very small goals. So good luck with that. And it sounds really amazing. Somebody's saying like, this is our aim. This is what we need to do in order to make everyone's life better. So thank you for that. And I want to thank you for the conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Peter. So thanks.
Thank you, Eddie. I loved our conversation today.
Yeah, it was fun. We should do it more.
As often as you like.
Sure. And to all of you change makers out there, thank you for joining us. And if you want to hear more about my work, go to invincibleinnovation.com. And I'll see you next week with another innovative, insightful talk. See ya.
Bye.
I'm Mazor Kario, and you've been listening to the Invincible Innovation Podcast. Make sure to visit our website, invincibleinnovation.com, where you can learn more about our programs and my book, Innovating Through Chaos. I'll be waiting for you next week in our next episode. Thank you for listening.